From 2014 until 2022, Belgium lived their most glorious period when it comes to football. Seemingly out of nowhere, the Belgian national team became one of the most packed squads in football, with talent coming in every position. Courtois, Kompany, De Bruyne, Hazard, Lukaku, those are just some of the names that carry the Belgian national team to the #1 position in the FIFA rankings. Still, despite their immense talent, the Red Devils couldn't achieve more than just a 3rd place in the 2018 World Cup. And now, just as quickly as they rose to the top, they're now set to lose their relevance once again with little left to show. So why did they fail? Many of you think that they were simply unlucky, but in this video I'll prove you all that there's a deeper reason behind their disappointing campaigns, and if you're not from Belgium, I'm confident that you have no idea about it. But first, let me give you some context. Prior to the 2014 World Cup, the Belgians had spent 12 years out of international tournaments, and before that drought, they were average at best, with a 4th place finish in the 1986 World Cup being a clear exception to the rule. But after another disappointing campaign in Euro 2000 in their home soil nonetheless, the Belgian FA decided that enough was enough and something needed to change if they wanted to compete against their rivals. So they came up with a plan that involved not only the national team's youth levels, but also the clubs and schools. The strategy was simple but effective. They instructed every youth team coach in the country and asked them to play in a 4-3-3 system with wingers, 3 midfielders and a flat back 4. Although they would revert back to their 3-defender system in their later years, getting the new generation accustomed to the same style of play helped them create routines and transition more easily from club football into international football. And it didn't take long to reap the rewards, since in the 2008 Olympics, the Belgians went all the way to the semi-finals, and in that squad, you could already find names like Kompany, Vertonghen or Fellaini. 17 players from that team would transition into the senior squad, but you wouldn't see an immediate difference, as they would once again miss the World Cup in 2010 and the Euros in 2012. At this point, you had a plan, you had the talent, what could be missing? A competent but open-minded coach that the young squad could relate to. And what better name than Mark Wilmots, who despite not having a great coaching experience, was one of the last good Belgian players from the country's dark ages. When he was signed, there weren't high hopes. After all, if they couldn't qualify with more experienced managers like Dick Advocaat, why should the Belgian people expect anything different? Every critic had a point, but they forgot about one thing. By 2012, many Belgians were already in the Premier League, and in the next years, others would also follow suit, which gave them a competitive edge over other national teams. All of that, combined with Wilmot's ability to connect with the players and have them give their all on the field, changed everything, and more than a decade later, Belgium were back in the World Cup. I remember watching the 2014 World Cup and feeling that Belgium was a massive question mark. Everyone was divided on what they could achieve, with some pessimists believing that Algeria, Russia and Korea could surprise and even eliminate the Belgians in the group stage, while others thought they could go extremely far and even saw them as dark horses to win the competition. After all, Hazard, Courtois and Kompany were on the top of the world, and they were players that would start in pretty much every national team 11. In the end, I guess you can say Belgium lived up to the expectations, since they topped their balanced but accessible group, beat the US in the round of 16 and then bowed against the eventual runners-up Argentina. It was an exciting way to start their golden period, but in the other end, it also brought a lot of pressure because as the players grew, so did the expectations, and by the time the next Euros rolled around, Belgium were no longer the underdogs. In fact, in their opening match, everyone saw them as the clear favorites, despite them facing Italy. However, the match did not go well, and no matter how much the Belgians attacked, the Italians still came out on top. Either way, Belgium still qualified out of the group and made it all the way to the quarterfinals once more. It looked like they were destined to be finalists, since they would be facing Wales, and in case they beat them, they would face a Portuguese side that hadn't even won a match in 90 minutes. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. The fact of the matter was that Belgium wasted their lead, got complacent, and Wales took advantage. Sure, they had some injury problems, but their squad depth was pretty good, at least good enough to put Wales away. But in reality, what we are seeing here were just the first few examples that Belgium, just like their low country neighbors, were massive bottlers. The Belgian FA wasn't complacent though, and after many people criticized the lack of a world-class coach, what do? They bring in Roberto Martinez, a guy who never in his entire career had even coached an elite side. It was a recipe for disaster, but at first sight, things actually went well. Belgium looked more imposing in qualifying and truly played like the world-class team they were. They were scoring goals after goals, but the ghosts of the battle heroes past were still very present. The pressure was still the same, and in a way, it got worse because the players knew that the window of opportunity to do something remarkable was gradually closing. Guys like Kompany, Fellaini, Dembele were already in their 30s and the rest weren't that young anymore. But in a more positive note, this was also the Belgian national team at the peak of their powers, and their bottling past was put to rest once and for all after beating England, avoiding another embarrassment against Japan in the round of 16, and by outclassing Neymar's Brazil in the quarters. The stage was set for a semi-final that looked more like a World Cup final. The Red Devils would go up against their neighbors France in a match that felt like a toss of a coin due to how evenly matched the two teams were. It was a clash of two golden generations, but after all was said and done, France were the ones on top. France later destroyed Croatia in the final, and Belgium did the same to England, leaving us all wondering what if Belgium had gone to that final instead of France? Was it possible for them to beat Croatia? I really think it was, but it's irrelevant at this point, and little did the players know that this was as good as it was gonna get. As despite being considered the best team in the world for the vast majority of the next 4 years, Belgium proceeded to disappoint once again in the Euros, losing the quarters against Italy and not even getting past the group stage in the 2022 World Cup. So to answer the question in everyone's mind, why did they collapse? Well, to be fair, keeping the Belgian national team united was almost an impossible task to begin with, as the country itself is extremely divided. To put it simply, the north and south of Belgium are vastly different from each other, with both regions contrasting a lot when it comes to political and societal views, and they even speak different languages. With Roberto Martinez's arrival, the players decided to put their differences aside and speak only in English during their stay in the national team camps. And as you can tell by what you just watched, that strategy initially worked and the players became more united than ever, especially with Kompany as captain. But as the pressure increased, the squad divided into several little groups where the players would usher conversations in their own languages and point fingers at each other. The situation only got worse with Kompany's departure in 2019 and Martinez's lack of courage to take over the group. In fact, Roberto Martinez not only failed from a man management point of view, but also in a tactical way, since he clearly witnessed the downfall of the Golden Generation and did nothing to gradually replace it, despite the nation having several young prospects on the rise. Ultimately, the Belgian Golden Generation's failure is a story that other nations have already lived, and many others will follow suit in the future. It's a great example that a collective of great players by itself won't win you anything, if they're not all on the same page, fighting for the same cause. But to be fair, I don't really blame the players. Imagine yourself in a big group filled with people you either don't like or can't relate to, and I'm sure you'd isolate yourself in tiny groups as well. The main culprit behind his waste of talent is the Belgian Football Federation that should have looked for a coach who could lead, unite and adapt the squad to guarantee that the Golden Generation window lasted for as long as possible and to avoid a terrible downfall like they suffered in the last World Cup. But what do you think? Can Belgium make a comeback or will they fall into obscurity once again? Let me know your opinion in the comments and let's start the discussion. Like the video if you want to watch more content like this and subscribe to Thorn FC so you never miss the most interesting football discussions, stories and news. Thank you for watching until the end, I appreciate you and I will see you soon.